Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, my name's Jenny and this is Arnold the Praying Penguin, and today we're going to be choosing what books we're going to be reading in February by playing our new TBR game, which is called Penguins Choose My TBR. So before we dive into the game, we're going to show you how we did in January, go through the different books that we read and how we found them. Also, if you don't know what TBR means, it just means to be read. So for us, it's just a list of books that we'd quite like to get to each month. So for January, these were the books that we were aiming to read, and so far we have read all three of these ones. I will talk about them in a minute. And we are currently halfway through The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, and we haven't yet started Unbroken. But it is only the 24th of January, and I also have this whole week off. So I have another whole week to read a book and a half. And I am going through this one really quickly, so I think this is very possible. Also, I haven't come up with any punishments for this game if I don't finish my TBR on time. Partly because I'm not sure what would be a good punishment. I don't just want to add books to my TBR because the point of this game is to help me read more. So reading more shouldn't be a punishment, if that makes sense. So if any of you have any good ideas of what a punishment could be for this game if I don't finish, let me know in the comments and maybe I'll add that in next time. But for now, I think I'm just going to roll it over. So if I happen to have not finished Unbroken, I will finish it in February, which is my aim anyway, to have at least started this in January. So for the books that I have read, first book I read was God on Mute, which is by Greig, and it's all about unanswered prayer. And I really enjoyed this book. You can see all of these tabs where I tabbed really great quotes, really great stories, things I want to look back on or think about a bit more or talk about on my blog even. But the structure of this book is really interesting. It goes through from Good Friday to Easter Sunday and talks on different elements of unanswered prayer through that journey, through that story, which is really, really interesting and really well done. I originally gave this book 4 stars, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to bump it up to 5 stars because I just keep thinking about it and it's still kind of staying with me a lot longer than I expected it to. And just all of these tabs. So the second book I read was Stop Calling Me Beautiful by Phylicia Masonheimer. And this is a book kind of encouraging, especially women, to dig deeper into their faith and into theology and not just kind of stay on a surface level of faith, but go deeper. And I think this book is going to be so life-changing for a lot of people. It really does kind of speak about a deeper level of faith that I know lots of people just don't experience early on in their faith journey. The way that she talks about freedom and victory and faith isn't something that I've seen a lot of in other books. She talks about it so encouragingly and empoweringly. It's something that you really want to experience. It doesn't sound stuffy, religion, boring-y, anything like that. Very good. But it did take a long time to get into. The first half especially just was not a quick read, took me ages. And I gave this one 4 stars. The third book I read in January was 7 Deadly Sins of Women in Leadership by Kate Coleman. And I've recently finished a course about leadership, and honestly this book told me far more interesting and useful information than like a year-long course did. So if you're interested in leadership, I would definitely recommend this book to both men and women actually, although it does kind of particularly talk to women as is kind of in the title. But this book just talks through 7 different behaviours that we should avoid if we're in any kind of position of leadership. And I thought my fear with this book was that it would be very focused on church leadership, people that are leading churches, which I think is like a lot of Christian stuff, just talks about church leadership. But actually, I think this is so useful in any kind of leadership. A lot of the examples, in fact, most of the examples are from women in a really wide variety of jobs. Different businesses, people working in healthcare, people starting their own business, really wide variety. This is definitely the kind of book that it's given me a really interesting overview, but I would definitely like go back to the individual chapters if I was struggling with a certain issue in here. And then the book I'm currently reading is The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss, which is such an interesting and great book so far. If I had to rate it now, I'd give it 5 stars. I'm really enjoying it, absolutely flying through it. The characters are so interesting and the plot is so interesting. And I know there are 2 more books in this series and I just can't wait to read all of them. But I will update you on this one and on Unbroken in next month's video. Or if you follow me on Instagram, I'll probably talk about these books as I finish them, as well as I'll have reviews up on my Goodreads and my story graph, which I will link both of those down in the description. So as well as the books that were on my Penguins Choose My TBR for January, I also read 2 other books, both by audiobook. So the first one I read at the very beginning of January was Love Almost by Hayley Doyle, which was an ARC I got on NetGalley, and I gave that a 3 stars. It was a really interesting book, a romance book about, I guess kind of romance book. It was like a contemporary romance book about a woman who'd been in a relationship for about 5 months when her boyfriend sadly passed away. It opened up these conversations about grieving for someone that you haven't actually known for that long. She hadn't really met many of his friends, and kind of what grief looks like when you're not part of that community. So it was really interesting, but I found some of the characters really kind of slightly unbelievable, I guess. Maybe this is just me being completely naive, but her parents, her mum especially, and one of her friends were just awful. They were really horrible. Like, I really hope that's not how people actually respond when someone is grieving. But some of the things they did were just ridiculous. Like, when she phoned her mum to tell her that her boyfriend had died, one of her first comments was, "Oh no, now you won't have a date to your brother's wedding." And I was like, is that actually how people think? So I don't know if that's just me being naive, but I didn't find that particularly believable, I guess. It was just very weird and very off-putting. Pulled me out of the story. And the other audiobook I listened to was Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Me and my husband are listening to all of the Harry Potters again. We've listened to them many times before, but we just listen to a little bit each night before we go to sleep. And I gave that one 4 stars. The Order of the Phoenix is probably my least favourite of the Harry Potter books, to be honest. But I really like the series, so it's not going to get much lower than a 4 star. But it's just long, and not a lot happens. And I find Harry quite irritating. He's very reckless in book 5. I just need him to calm down a little bit. He needs to chill out. So those are the books I read in January. And before we move on to what I'm going to read in February, I just want to give a quick recap of the game in case you missed last month's video. So this is the game. As you can see, we have our penguin counter over here where we finished last month, and our dice to help us move around the board. And we have all these different circles that we can land on. So the green circles each represent a different kind of penguin, which corresponds to a different genre that we'll pick a book of that genre. All of the blue circles are special penguins, different kind of fictional penguins that each have a special prompt attached to them. And then for the yellow, orange and red circles, we bring out Mr. Penguin Pot. And when we use Mr. Penguin Pot, we will be rummaging around in these slips of paper and pulling out a piece of paper that corresponds to the circle that we landed on. So all of the yellow circles and the yellow pieces of paper are different challenges from our 21 books in 2021 reading challenge. All of the orange circles and the orange pieces of paper are different prompts. So these are basically prompts that allow something else to choose what book I read. So this could be the book on my Goodreads TBR with the highest number of pages. Or it could be that my pet is going to pick my book. Things like that. And then the red pieces of paper, if we land on the red dot, we pull out one of these pieces of paper, and these correspond to unread books that are on my TBR. And we'll just open this up, and whatever book it says on here is what we shall be reading. If any of you guys have great ideas for what prompts we should add, especially in the orange category, do let me know down in the comments and maybe we'll add those in. So let's go for our first roll. 1. We have got a yellow. Let's have a rummage around. recommended by a friend. Ooh. Okay, so for a book recommended by a friend, I've picked up Home for Good. And this is actually my aunt and uncle's copy of this book because they gave it to me to read and recommended that I read it. Home for Good is a charity here in the UK that helps support people who are thinking about fostering and adopting and helps them through all of the processes around that. And this book, I believe, is kind of the story of how Home for Good came about Krish Kandaya and his family's kind of experience with adoption and fostering, and then how he kind of came to set up Home for Good. Other than that, I don't really know anything about it, but it's quite nice and short, and I think it's going to be really interesting. Last month I found having 3 quite instructional non-fiction books on my TBR right at the beginning, all in a row, was quite intense and definitely slowed down my reading in January. So hopefully you won't have too many non-fiction. I'm a bit nervous starting with that, but it is short and I think it's going to be full of different stories and be written a bit more as a story rather than like instructional. So I think it'll be a bit easier and nicer. Okay, roll number 2. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Macaroni Penguin. So the Macaroni Penguins live here in the Falkland, and in this game they represent a wild card, so I can choose any book that I like of any genre, absolutely my choice, which is so exciting. I'm very happy about that. I have my laptop here with all of the books on my spreadsheet for my TBR. So let's have a look at what I need to read. So for this, I'm going to choose a book called A Killer's Daughter by Jenna Kernan. I've very kindly been given a e-arc over on NetGalley. So a big thank you to NetGalley and to Bookature for letting me read this. Hopefully I'll have read it by the 11th of February. But this is a thriller all about an FBI forensic psychologist. FBI forensic psychologist. That's quite hard to say. It's about an FBI forensic psychologist whose mother was actually a serial killer when she was younger, and it's about her discovering this crime that seems to be quite similar to the ones that her mother committed when she was young. Apart from that, I don't know too much. I think this is the beginning of a new series, so I'm really looking forward to reading that. Okay, roll number 3. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. An orange one. Out comes Mr. Penguin. The story graph, highest pages. We're gonna have a long book. Okay, so I've got my laptop and we're gonna pull up the story graph. So the longest book on my story graph TBR is To Serve Them All My Days by R.F. Delderfield. I haven't read any Delderfield books before, but this was given to me by my dad and he recommended that I give this one a go. As far as I know, it's about a soldier who fought in the First World War and comes back home after the First World War to become a teacher, I think. Yeah, a teacher. But from my understanding, he has a bit of PTSD, but kind of before PTSD was fully kind of understood. But apart from that, I don't really know anything else about this. It has a lot of pages and very teeny tiny text, so this one could be a long one, but hopefully it will be really good. Roll number 4. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have another yellow. What's this one? A book about penguins. Okay. So considering I really love penguins, we all know I love penguins, I don't actually have that many books about penguins. There are a few that I would love to have at some point, but I don't have them on my shelf yet. So I am going to go quite easy on myself and pick. I'm going to give myself 2 because they are teeny tiny. So let's put 2 of them on the list. So this one is Penguin Problems by Jory John and illustrated by Lane Smith. And this is Blue Penguin by Peter Horakek. These are obviously both children's books about penguins, and they have really beautiful, beautiful artwork. So I'm gonna have fun reading my penguin books. And for our fifth and final roll, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have African penguin. So we have African penguins here in South Africa, and in our game African penguins correlate to thrillers, so we can choose any thriller for this prompt. So for the last book for this month's TBR, I've chosen 3 Hours by Rosamund Lupton. And this is a thriller that is all about a school shooting taking place in Somerset, and it follows just over a period of 3 hours all these different characters kind of in different places in this situation. So I think it takes place over just a time frame of just 3 hours. I don't think I'm going to read it in just 3 hours, but I think it is going to be a really fast-paced, fast read. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. So this is our stack of books that we're going to be reading in February. We have Home for Good by Krish Kandiah with Miriam Kandiah. We have To Serve Them All My Days by R.F. Delderfield. 3 Hours by Rosamund Lupton. Penguin Problems by Jory John and Lane Smith. And Blue Penguin by Peter Horakek. As well as A Killer's Daughter by Jenna Kernan, which is on ebook. And I'm actually really pleased with this pile of books. I think this is going to be really fun to read this month. I'm really looking forward to a lot of these books. We hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please do give it a big thumbs up and let us know down in the comments what books you're planning to read in February. What books are you really looking forward to? Or if you've read any of the books that we're planning to read this month, how did you find them? Did you like them? And make sure you're subscribed to see more videos from me and Arnold, including next month when we'll have Penguins Choose My March TBR. But before then, we'll have loads more videos all about prayer, exploring the Bible and living out our faith. So we'll see you on Saturday for a new video. Bye!